Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, over there in Denver, Colorado. The great Round Ball Ramble man himself, Corban Ford. Corban, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Always happy to talk hoops, so we are good over here.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're also cozy. You got the beanie tonight. So
yeah, which is for purposes. I'm hoping the Laker energy rubs off because, I mean, we need it, right? And also, it is cold out here in Colorado, and I left my heater in my bedroom. So it's also like an aesthetic, but also, you know, got a little haircut, so it's good.
There you go. It's supposed to snow here in East Tennessee next Tuesday. We're supposed to, first time this year. I'm kind of excited.
Real quick, I was in Tennessee about 3 weeks ago, cookout for the first time. So I got
cookout's dangerous because the rest of your day is canceled. One of the most amazing things to me is when I see people at the drive-thru at cookout, and they go on with their day at lunch. Like you just go on with your work day. There are some foods that I don't understand. Like that's putting you to sleep. It's nap time. The day's over. I'm going to sleep and I'm not going back to work if I'm getting cookout for lunch. It's done.
For real. I agree.
Also here, a first-timer, Jackson Lloyd, medium, great NBA writer, guy I followed for the last couple years here on whatever we want to call NBA Twitter these days. But Jackson, one of my favorites, up and coming, so make sure you're reading Jackson if you are not already doing so on Medium and everywhere else. Jackson, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, even better now that I'm here.
Awesome. Well, we are happy to have you, sir, because we have a lot of NBA stuff to talk about. We need to start here because ever since the Lakers won the NBA Cup here, Corban, we're going to start with your Los Angeles Lakers. Outside of a nice victory, LeBron turning back the clock here against the Clippers a few nights ago, it's been pretty rough for the Lakers. Under 500, flirting with 500. We'll see where they're at come the end of January here, but what plagues the Lakers, as someone who has tuned into every game, if you had to put your finger on what the biggest issue plaguing this Lakers team right now, what is it?
I mean, it's a mix of things. I know if you're, Coach Darvin Ham and even LeBron James a little bit, you want to blame injuries, and I get that. But, like, the majority of the players that really impact this team, and that's really LeBron James and Anthony Davis, have been surprisingly healthy this year. And you've even gotten good, I would say a good number of games from Austin Reeves as well. So I feel like it's really just the personnel not quite working out. I think, obviously the whole LeBron era, it's been horrible in terms of shooting. Like that's not been great. Even when they won the championship in 2020, it was more like, bully ball and a hot streak from three in the bubble during the playoffs, rather collectively. Remember, Anthony Davis, that really did it. But the lack of shooting has been an issue, and it still is. I mean, the Lakers are, I think, the only team that makes less threes or shoots a worse percentage is the Pistons. They're just not a good shooting team. And so that's an issue. And also the personnel is just not really a great fit. Like, yes, in theory, having a guy like Cam Reddish, having a guy, of course, like Jared Vanderbilt alongside LeBron, AD, you have playmakers of Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell. Like, you can mix and match. You have Christian Wood for size and, Jackson Hayes as well. But, like, they don't really work together. Like, Jackson Hayes is a foul machine kind of, that's what he is. And then he's not bringing you much offensively outside of lobs. Christian Wood's been good, but for reasons that are curious, he's been on the bench off and on. That's another thing. Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell, great, but you have them as point of attack defenders on the other end. That's their lunch meat. That's not their role, right? And you don't need all of their offensive contributions. We have a LeBron there. At the same time, you can't just have them both on the bench and just have LeBron rolling for it because he's not 29 anymore, and he can't just totally run the show like that. So, and then Jared Vanderbilt and Cam Reddish, great defenders, total zeros offensively. I think Jared Vanderbilt's like 7 of 25 from three, and Cam Reddish is shooting under 30% from three. Like, defense is like, please take the shot. So, like, those are kind of the personnel issues. Then you add to that Darvin Ham, who I think is a great motivational guy. I think he says all the right things. I love hearing him speak. Like, he fires me up. I'm like, yeah, I can do this. But, like, if it was like, giving you actual game plans on how we're going to do it, I don't think he's that guy. Like, he's more of the motivational pump up speaker than the actual execution. This is how we do it. Because between some of his rotations, some of his defensive and offensive schemes, like, what are we doing? And I've seen several, instances on Twitter where people have pointed out that LeBron and AD kind of call audibles. Like, nah, we're going to do it this way. And it works. And Darvin Ham, hands in his pockets, like, all right, great work. So it's a few things. But I would say it's just they need a shakeup. And I really was hoping that they wouldn't. I was a big fan of the Lakers have continuity this year after having not had continuity over the last 4 years of the LeBron era. Like, every year there's been some either subtle or seismic shift in personnel. But in this case, I just think, like, it was one thing to say, okay, we're not as good as the Nuggets. It's another thing to say we're not as good as half the teams in the NBA, And I'm not saying Lakers are that bad, but they're definitely not, like, among the best.
Do you agree with that assessment, Jackson?
So it's been a weird season for the Lakers because when I watched them in the IST, I was just self-confirming, great call, Jackson. You hit it on the head again. The Lakers are solid enough offensively with the two guards, D'Lo and Reeves, and then they had obviously the two stars, LeBron and AD, and they were a problem for the Indiana Pacers in the IST with the money on the line. But over the past 3 or 4 weeks, however long it's been, they've taken a step back defensively, but even bigger than that, Corban hit it on the head, is the offense. And to his point, Cam Reddish, he's been having a pretty decent season for what he is. He's one of the better wing forward perimeter defenders in the league. I truly think he's a great defender. But every time I check his shooting splits on the season, in the games, teams don't guard him as much as you'd think. And whenever he's open, it's like, oh no, Cam Reddish is open. And then it's like, oh, it's Cam Reddish. We can probably, get by on that. He's been around 30% on the year from three. And even to that, I feel like a lot of the times if it's an above the break three or if he drives a closeout, you can live with that as a defense because he's not exactly a poised and under control driver. And me personally, I think that the Lakers have missed when Russell had I think it was a tailbone injury against the Timberwolves. I do think that they missed him to some extent because they're so short on ball handling, especially with trying to implement Jared Vanderbilt again. They keep flip-flopping Christian Wood and Jackson Hayes. I'm a big Taurean Prince fan, but there's only so much that type of player is going to do, especially because the shot diet that he is getting, catch and shoot threes, a lot of them in transition, it's going to be kind of a streakier output than someone who has the ball more or gets a lot of they're capable of shooting movement threes, something like that.
It's also got to be kind of demoralizing if you're a Laker fan in terms of just like AD's been healthy all year and AD's playing tremendous basketball and it just doesn't matter this year. To this point, it just hasn't been a difference maker just because of the reasons that you guys have laid out. I wonder too, Tom Ziller wrote a really good piece in his Substack a few days ago about the Lakers and where they're at and trying to figure out where their problems lie. And one of the things that he pointed out was just that, like, hey, you could get Corban, this is something you talked about at the top of the show here at the Lakers, is that, like, they've never been a dominant offensive team in the LeBron AD era. Like, we've never seen this hyper-efficient top 5 efficiency offense in Los Angeles with this group. But they still won a title playing that way. They were still a team that, when you had the number 1 defense, which they had in the bubble, that goes a long way when you're able to play bully ball. Kind of like Michigan and the way that Michigan just won a national title this week. When you have those kind of dudes and you can play that kind of style, hey, you might just be okay. The problem is the defense isn't the same anymore. The defense is not number 1 in the NBA. So not only do you have one of the worst offenses in the NBA, you also have a good defense. You don't have an elite defense. And I think that's like an under talked about part of this is that unfortunately for the Lakers, their margin for error and margin, I guess, for slippage on defense was very thin because we knew coming into the year that with the personnel they brought in, like the offense was not going to be a top 10 offense in this league, especially not from deep. And it just, I think that is something that has to get cleaned up if they're going to jump back into the contendership status. Is like we need to see like a 2-month stretch where they're the number 1 defensive team in basketball. But I don't know if they have it right now.
Well, yeah, a lot of that, again, personnel's changed, right?
Mm,
Back then you had Alex Caruso, you had Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, you know, you had a younger LeBron James, you had a younger
mm,
Anthony Davis, you know, and I think you had JaVale McGee on the back line, you know, and Dwight Howard as well.
yeah.
And all those guys are gone. LeBron's older, and AD, you know, he's also older, but still competent. But now, you know, in place of them, outside of, you know, Cam Reddish and Jared Vanderbilt, who are more offensive liabilities than the guys I mentioned for that 2020 championship team. So you have to really manage their minutes more differently. You're playing guys who defensively are not up to that level. Like,
Mm,
I think Austin Reeves competes. I think D'Angelo Russell competes. They're not bad defenders because they're just lazy, lackadaisical, not focused. Just physically and well, yeah, physically they don't have the tools. You know what I mean? And they're not great there. And then if you look at other guys who are mix and match around them, like Rui Hachimura can be, you know, when he's healthy, you know, he can be somewhat competent, but he's not a great guy there. And you kind of go up and down the rest of the roster, and you got defenders who are adequate, you know, and that's a lot for Anthony Davis to clean up. LeBron James, especially laterally, is shot there, and
mm.
it's still, you know, it's a marvel to see him do the things he's able to do at his age, and I love that. Like hearing that and all the things, that's great. But like when you see him defensively, sometimes, man, like like it's definitely the mileage that's caught up, like in general. And so yeah, defensively, you're right. Like they go from, you know, one of the top teams when engaged to middle of the pack when engaged. You know, and if they're not engaged, look out.
I mean, that's just a dangerous place for this team to be in. Just right there at the play-in. I mean, Jackson, I think another part of it, I wonder, you know, sometimes it's just like you want to do over for both sides. Sometimes it's just like something just doesn't work out in the NBA on both sides. You're like immediately there's just buyer's remorse. Dennis Schroeder going to Toronto, clearly a lot of buyer's remorse there. He thought it was going to be his team and get an opportunity to start and kind of carried this Toronto Raptors team with several all-stars around him and see what he could do on that front. Instead, that ship's sailed. You have Emmanuel Quickly who's past him, and it's now going to be Quickly running the show post OG Anunoby trade. And then you have Gabe Vincent, who's given you nothing. And that was something that we were like, oh, that's a fun Lakers signing. Like, because they're a defense first team and he had a great year with Miami. And like, hey, he got paid, good for him. But he hasn't played and he hasn't been a difference maker. He obviously, that's not been money well spent. You lose Caruso 2 years ago. Obviously, they've never been able to replace him. I think the Gabe Vincent swing and a miss and Schroeder not them not re-signing Schroeder, I think also could have cleared up a lot of these issues, because I think they could have they can still really use somebody like Dennis Schroeder, especially what we saw in the playoffs last year, right?
I agree.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Corbin.
No, I cut you off. Please, Jackson.
To your point, I think the Lakers miss a player, like Corbin said, Reeves and D'Lo. They can play within a team context. Like I think that D'Lo, if he has a strength as a defender, it's some like perception plays where he's a step ahead of the offensive player. He reads it. He'll get some steals. He has good hands. However, they really miss the guy, which this was a positive the other night against the Clippers, is how well they defended James Harden on pick and rolls. They defended Kawhi Leonard well. But an issue for them, in my opinion, is regardless of whether Russell and Reeves are tasked with defending smaller, quicker players or bigger, broader, stronger players, in both aspects, they're going to be coming up short in that. And I think that I can buy into this Lakers roster because I like a lot of their players, but it just seems like they're a roster. I wouldn't want to say turmoil, but they are going to overhaul some things on the fly. It'll be an interesting kind of January, February season for them. I was looking at cleaning the glass for December 12th to now. I think that was the first game after the IST. And offensively, what really surprised me is they're 28th in the league in offensive rebounding percentage.
Huh.
And then free throw attempt rate, they're I'm sorry, I misread that. 29th in offensive rebounding, 23rd in free throw attempt rate. And
Jeez.
I don't want to just pile on numbers and numbers and numbers that support my argument, but I was thinking about it contextually. And my thinking is that with the lack of shooting, the lack of healthy ball handling, as we talked about, D'Lo missed some time, and they've been trying to implement Vanderbilt back in that like 4 or 5 rotation spot. I think that teams can load up on the ball, get in the driving gaps, and if you're taking a lot of contested, or not necessarily contested shots, but if you're taking the shots the defense wants you to take, aka not at the rim, not open looks where the defense has to rotate over, they're not going to foul you as much, and you're not going to get as many offensive rebounds. And it's going to lead to more defensive rebounds, transition opportunities for the opponent. And basically it's interconnected. And that's why we have this period of basketball from the Lakers.
Can we also just agree that they need, like, the Levine stuff? Corban, you and I have talked about this a lot, and just like what they actually need to do at the deadline, because clearly they're going to do something. Like they're going to do something. They're going to add. I think they have to double down on the defense. Like, I think they have to not worry about getting middle of the road offense, because I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if there's a couple trades that's going to vault them into the top 10 in offensive efficiency at this point in the year. What I would do is probably double down. Like, I don't know if that means bringing Caruso back and Schroeder back. Just get as many defense first guys around AD and LeBron and see what happens, because you've seen that kind of thing succeed, and you've seen just what Anthony Davis is healthy this year, which is still an elite MVP type player, and then we'll see what LeBron looks like come playoff time and when he gets up for it. But I think that's where my head's more at, is like, you just need to add defensive personnel on the wing and at the guard spot, and not worry about the Levines of the world and trying to get that jumpstart that offense, because I don't think you're ever going to get enough juice on that front to make that a worthwhile investment, because of what you would lose defensively, and that just being what's won you a title with this core.
No, I agree. It's one of those things, like, way to start it off. I'm already depressed.
I'm sorry.
Like, no,
I'm
it's
sorry.
fine. It's not the Golden State
You've
Warriors.
won a title, and also you're not in a situation, just to be clear, where I'm dealing on a day-to-day basis of the DeJounte Murray being readily available for my Atlanta Hawks. Like, the story coming out that the Spurs are a legitimate trade option after getting multiple picks and us just paying DeJounte Murray for the Spurs, and then to trade back DeJounte Murray to the Spurs for 75 cents on the dollar. That it ruined my entire morning. Like, the Atlanta Sports Guys group chat has been just awful all week long. Just John Collins for nothing, DeJounte Murray for nothing. Just everything is terrible. And it was funny when you were describing D'Lo's defensive ability, Jackson, a few minutes ago. I was like, is he talking about Trae Young or D'Lo? Because that's the only thing I can say about Trae. He's got good hands sometimes, and he the times Trae will make a play on defense is when he's able to one step ahead one time, and he'll make a nice little steal every couple games. But yeah, I don't know, Corban. It could be worse. That's what I'm trying to say here. You could be the Atlanta Hawks right now.
I appreciate that context. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you could have DeJounte Murray. I don't know what we want back. I don't want Cam Reddish back, even though.
I mean, can I interest you in a Cam Reddish, Rui Hachimura for Jalen Johnson? I'm just kidding.
No, Jalen. Hold on.
That's literally
the modern Amari Stoudemire is going nowhere. Jalen Johnson is so much fun. Love Jalen Johnson in my life. I mean, there is so much young Amari Stoudemire in this dude. And if Amari came in the league right now, Jalen can fly,
he's
man.
He's already better defensively than anything that I've seen from Amari.
Yeah. But hey, I'll take it. Like, that'd be fun. Like, a couple years of Trae and Jalen. It's not winning a title, but it could be really fun. I don't know. But this is not a Hawks podcast. No sadness here. Well, this could help your mood here a little bit, Corban.
Let's get it.
In terms of, like, the injury sucks, but it could be worse. You could be the Memphis Grizzlies this year, where they already had a steep road of getting back into the playoff chase, the real contention chase. Ja Morant comes back. He's fun. They're starting to get a little bit healthy, and then Ja Morant's in a sling, and then it's announced that Ja Morant is lost for the season. What does this mean to you, Corban, in terms of what the rest of this Grizzlies season looks like, and how you would go about it if you're running the Grizzlies right now?
At this point, let's see what we can get for guys like Zaire Williams. Let's see what we can look at for guys like Jake Larivee. Like, I'm not saying in a bad way. The Grizzlies already had an issue at their wing position regardless. Like, they already had an issue there regardless since, just at their three. So I feel like since Dylan Brooks, I guess. I mean, Dylan Brooks wasn't a perfect fit, but, like, they really miss him in general. Getting Ja Morant back was great. There was still issues that had to be worked out, right? And the team was still in a precarious position in the West where they had to climb a lot. Like, they're not going to bottom out low enough to be where the Spurs are, low enough to be in that area. They're not going to be in the cellar of the West, but they're obviously clearly not good enough to really compete for the upper, they're not making a play for the 6th seed, right? Like, at best, they're probably 9 and 10 at best, if everything worked out. Obviously, and unfortunately, that did not happen. So I feel like the Grizzlies at this point, like, be active in the trade market, see if you can shore up some pieces around your team. So when Ja Morant comes back next season, he's come back to a better fit roster around him. You already know that you're not moving Ja. You already know how you feel about Desmond Bane. You already know how you feel about Jaren Jackson Jr. You get Steven Adams next year back. You get Brandon Clark possibly this year, but more than likely next year. And at this point, might as well just have him come back next year, right? And see if you can take some of your picks and some of the younger players that you're not sure about or are sure about and want to reap some value for them to get better fitting pieces around this team so you can properly contend next year when Ja comes back healthy. That's what I would do, because right now, like, it is a lost season for Memphis. And it's unfortunate, but those happen, right? Look at the 2020 Golden State Warriors. I mean, you could look at the 2022 Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, there's teams that are just, it's lost seasons. You just gotta eat that. And I feel like the Grizzlies are in a position where they have to take that, but they can also reevaluate this team and make more aggressive moves, knowing that they're building for next season and not this season, but as a possible contender, and not like, oh, we're just trying to get back in the playoffs.
What do you think, Jackson?
So this season, I recall before it that I thought the Grizzlies would be stabilized until Morant came back. And despite Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. playing very well, in my opinion, I think Jackson Jr. has a really good kind of left-handed push shot now, drive with his left hand and finish. And then obviously Desmond Bane is just ascending each and every season. What I underestimated is once the Kennard and Smart injuries hit, that puts so much emphasis on all of these younger players that have been, I'm not going to come on here and tell you guys that they're misses in the NBA draft, because I don't have that kind of refinement, like firm view on them that maybe a Memphis Grizzlies fan does. However, I will say Vince Williams Jr. has been a bright spot for them, but they got guys like Jake LaRavia, John Conchar, who's supposedly a trade candidate. He was actually a good find, undrafted, but this is just a weird kind of mismatch of injured players like Steven Adams and Brandon Clark. You got a vet like Derrick Rose, who I think he has a hamstring injury the last I checked. I might be wrong on that. But you go right. 6-3 with Ja in the games he played. I think they were 7-4 overall since he made his debut, and then he got the injury. And when I saw that news, that was such a gut punch, because I really liked what they had kind of retooled around Morant. And yes, I think a perception of the Grizzlies is that they were always a one-man show. I didn't like that kind of viewpoint, and they did lose Dylan Brooks, and it's a roster that's been in flux. But I really wanted to see Morant, Smart, Bane, Kennard, all these really solid, great perimeter players playing together. I'm a believer that you need to have as much ball handling and shooting as possible. And if you have guys who can shoot, be closeouts, ideally pair 2 or 3 of them together, you can get some really beautiful stuff, because as we see around the league, maybe you can have too much ball handling if it doesn't click with certain lineups and builds. But you don't want to play with having too little shooting, too little ball handling. And while I think the Grizzlies had the right idea trading for Marcus Smart, getting in on that, I think he's going to be a really good fit with Morant and JJJ and Desmond Bane moving forward. Like Corban said, just not their year. Sometimes you have that season from hell, and you kind of have to wash your hands of it, assess the situation, and kind of gauge the value of everything around you in February moving forward.
I also wonder, Corban, if you look at it, I mean, we know Jaren Jackson, he's made the leap, obviously a great defensive player and really broke out last year in this regard. The thing that I worry most, I wonder if you're a Memphis Grizzly fan, you worry most about, like, I don't know how many just great injury-free years you're going to get out of Jaren Jackson Jr. Like, very injury-prone early on in his career. We know how this goes with 7-footers with the kind of skill set that Jaren Jackson has. And I don't know. That's what stinks about these lost seasons. When you have Ja Morant in his prime, when you have Desmond Bane playing the way that he is, when you make a big swing for a Marcus Smart, and you have Jaren Jackson playing at the level that he's playing at. You don't know how many bites at the apple you're going to get with this group. And to lose now the whole season just really being down the drain and Jaren being healthy, you're like, man, okay, we'll get Ja back next year, but like, am I sure that Jaren Jackson is going to be able to go and be as injury free as he's been to this point? Like, are we sure the stars are going to align where all of our main core guys are going to be healthy at the same time. That's just necessary for a deep playoff run and getting to where you want to be. I don't know. It just sucks if you're a Grizzlies fan because you really wanted to see what this group looked like healthy. And you look at the West this year, I mean, the Nuggets, I think, are still, probably the favorites right now in the West, I would say. But it's pretty wide open. Like, the Timberwolves are looking at the 1 seed, and we haven't seen a deep Timberwolves run yet, and we'll see what they look like. Like, if the Wolves get the Suns in round 1, I don't know. I mean, a healthy Suns versus Timberwolves?
I would hate that as a Timberwolves fan because I think the Suns would beat the Timberwolves.
I think so, too. That's what I'm saying. Like, the West is open.
I think it would be tough. I'm going to say it. And I'm saying this is someone who, like, lived in Arizona up until this past summer. But, like, the Suns' defense is shaky. Mm-hmm. Their continuity among their 3 stars and their role players is almost non-existent, given the amount of time they've played together. Mm-hmm. You know? And also, I mean, Kevin Durant has slipped defensively. Bradley Beal's not a good defender. And Devin Booker is, like, okay there. But, like, an engaged Anthony Edwards come playoff time, that's a beast. Now, yeah, you could say the Suns could overwhelm, the Wolves with all 3 of their stars playing at peak, and that's true. But I don't know. I definitely wouldn't be one. I'd definitely say it goes at least 6 games. Like, I'm definitely not one to give the Suns. I don't see any reason to give the Suns benefit of the doubt. They haven't done anything yet.
Yeah.
Let me give benefit of the doubt. They're right here with the Lakers in the middle of the West, and the Wolves are the number 1 seed. And I think at this point, they're there because they've shown a body of work that, yes, they're good. Their crunch time execution has been not great, but neither has Phoenix's. So I don't know. I guess I'm pushing back just a little bit because I'm with y'all both. Like, I think Phoenix would beat them, but I don't know if it's a given at all.
No. I just think the broader point here is that it's open. Like, you can look at a lot of these matchups and you're like, man, I could see either of these going. Like, I'm not sure. Like, let me pull up the standings right now based on who is where in the West. So right now it'd be Wolves, Rockets, but the Rockets get the Suns to the play, and I would pick up the Suns. So you're looking at probably Wolves, Suns, Thunder, Mavs, like Luka versus the first real, like this super young OKC team. You want Kyrie and Luka in that first round series? I could see absolutely Luka and the Mavericks getting out of that series against the Thunder. I still am a believer in what the Thunder are building long term, but do I think they're going to go deep in the playoffs? No, I don't. Young teams don't, generally speaking. Nuggets, Pelicans. It's going to be, I would take the Nuggets. That's probably the safest bet of anyone in the first. But Zion, who knows what Zion looks like in his first playoff series, and a healthy Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum. They're a deep team. That's going to be a little bit of a problem for Denver. And then Clippers, Kings, like, I'd be pretty surprised if the Kings beat the Clippers if both are healthy going into that series. But look, Kings, they're fun, and even though I don't know what's going on with Harrison Barnes and where he'll end up and what the Kings
I think
are doing,
they'll make a trade at the deadline. Not
back to Golden State.
Say that again.
Back to Golden State for Harrison Barnes. Where do you think he goes if you think he's moved to the deadline?
I have no idea. I'm not good at building trades or CBA ramifications, but just the reporting around the Kings, it seems like they really want to do something with Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, and maybe Davion Mitchell, whatever kind of picks they can trade in the near future. I think that they need to add some size at the 3 and 4. I just look at the impact, like, not to draw parallels between teams with European bigs, but the impact that Aaron Gordon had on the Nuggets. I think that if the Kings got a player cut from a similar cloth who was a better defensive player than Harrison Barnes, because he's pretty slow-footed now. Obviously, the athleticism that we saw at North Carolina is the distant past. I don't know. I'm not great at building trades, but I don't want to count out the Kings. I don't want to count out any team in that upper tier in the West, because it's going to be all about matchups, health, timing, and everyone hates this, but luck too. I mean, if 2 even teams play, one of them is going to lose, even if they're even.
That's fair. Corban.
Yes.
How many All-Stars are in Toronto right now? Because I've seen different takes on this. I've seen different, like, okay, is it... And let's throw OG on here, by the way. Pre-trade. We're going to throw OG back into this group. Do they have 3 All-Stars on this team? Can you have 3 All-Stars when you're having the kind of year the Raptors are having? I don't know. Scottie's the only one I'm certain about. But what say you, sir?
I'm going to make it easy for you. No, you can't. You have one. You got Scottie. You're happy to have that, and there we are. You know, like I wouldn't say the Dallas Mavericks have two. Like Kyrie's missed a lot of time when he's been healthy. He's been good, right? And no, he wouldn't because it's clearly been Luka. The Mavericks are, kind of middle of the pack. Kyrie hasn't played enough. Like that makes enough sense for me. OG was solid when he was with Toronto, but even if he was with Toronto now, he wouldn't be an all-star. Pascal, I don't know what I just said. Anyway, Pascal Siakam has been solid as well. Not all-star. He's been solid, but not all-star. Maybe he's picked in reserve. If it's that deep, I have to look through my rankings again. I probably will I'm not against it per se, but off the top of the head, no, it's only Scottie Barnes that makes it. And that's it for me. I think, like you said, it's a mixture of while Scottie Barnes clearly elevated his game, averaging career highs in a number of categories for him, been the clear leader of this team. And also Pascal's been a great supporting piece, but he's not been at that level. OG Anunoby was not at that level. And also the Wolves, not the Wolves, the Raptors are where they are. I'm sorry, you're not picking, 3 All-Stars. This isn't the 2015 Atlanta Hawks. Right? And even when they had the 2016.
Hold on. It was a whole team, and they were deserving for the month of January. I want to say it was either January or February.
No. But they all won Player of the Month, right?
Yeah, it was Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver, Damari Carroll, Paul Millsap, and Al Horford. They all deserved it, and I won't hear anything else about it.
Okay.
Pero
Did the coaches
honestly
collude to vote for that? How did that even happen?
I tell you they did. Team basketball, they must have felt like this was a way to stick it to the people. And then, you see, it doesn't matter about individual talent because you can have a great team and then individual talent just whoop they anyway. But no, moving. I'm sorry.
We won a lot of games, Corban. It was a lot of fun. The Highlight Factory was a great time back then. I will say Jeff Teague having the best personality of that group, and we didn't find out about that until he did a podcast many years later, was one of the more baffling things to me. Is I just never knew. Jeff Teague was the most boring point guard we've had in my lifetime, and he was just solid, and
George
just didn't say much. Word. Yeah, just weird.
But yes, exactly. And yeah, in January 2015, the entire starting 5. But anyways, going right back, this Toronto Raptors team is not that team anyway. This Toronto Raptors team is currently 11th in the Eastern Conference. I'm sorry, you do not get 3 All-Stars. I don't care how weak the East is in that scenario. So that's just my thoughts.
Is OG an All-Star for you?
No. Why would OG be? And I'm not saying that disrespectfully, but OG's put up solid numbers. He has been having a breakout career season.
Yeah.
OG is averaging what? 15 points per game, shooting 37% from 3, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. And I hate to just go off the counting stats. When you watch the game, he doesn't match the eye stats at All-Star. Eye test at All-Star. Look at the numbers. He's a very valuable role player, and that's great for him. He wasn't worth 3 first-round picks last season. He's not worth an All-Star bid this season.
What say you, Jackson? Is it 2? Do you put Pascal in the All-Star game? Is he playing at an All-Star level? Is there something we're missing with Pascal Siakam that you see?
So, with the Raptors, when you first asked me this question on the show sheet outline, I was like, multiple All-Stars for the Raptors. But I think you make a valid point because Siakam, over the past 6 weeks or so, I think he's really trending up. He's a really unique player. Everybody makes the spin move jokes as if he's a repetitive driver, and he does the spin move. But to me, he's a really cerebral player, sizing up, getting into that 10 to 14 foot space, and he has soft touch in that area. He's not a long 2 artist like a Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Brandon Ingram, etc. But on those touch shots in the lane, he's really tough. He's good at turnaround jump shots, and while he doesn't live at the free throw line, he gives you some of that. He's a good spray passer for his position, solid enough defensively. I don't think he's going to make the All-Star team, especially because it seems like guys involved in trade rumors and the possibility of switching teams and just kind of the league's view of that, it seems like they very rarely make the All-Star team. But like I said, he's an All-Star caliber player. He has every right to view himself in that regard, and I won't degrade anyone who thinks that he's an All-Star. I will say OG Anunoby is not an All-Star. He is a really good player. He's going to make a ton of money. The trade to the Knicks has set them up very well for the next move they make. And I think that they're kind of like a stealth sleeping giant in New York. With that said, I think the Raptors did relatively good getting a guy like Quickly, who they can hopefully retool and refocus this timeline core roster build around Scottie Barnes and whomever they attain over the next couple of years.
Are we all convinced Scottie's a multi-time All-Star? Can he be, like, does he seem like best player on a contender 5 years from now, or do we still need to wait and see as to what his final form is? Could be.
I'm gonna speak quickly. I'm gonna wait and see, just because he exploded so quickly. I mean, he had a really good rookie year, took a major step back from a sophomore perspective, and then all of a sudden, boom, right? Let me see one more year of this, and I'll feel a lot better about it. But as of right now, I'm wait and see, and it's not a bad wait and see. It's just like, okay, everything, we had a real quick high and a really deep low, and now we're back on a high. Let's see the next year. I want to see some stability there.
Like, would you be surprised, Jackson, if he 2 years from now is regarded as the best player in the East?
I would be stunned if that happened, but I do
Okay.
think that he'll be a multi-time All-Star, and I think that he's a worthwhile building block, and I'm glad that the Raptors, I want them to get more perimeter talent and better guards. They had a lot of good players, and even with guys like Chris Boucher, who are big men, Yak Pirtle, those are good players. But you just look at their roster, and they don't have the requisite pull-up shooting. When they had FVV, he's a really good, I mean this in a complimentary sense, despite him being a good passer, he's a pretty good pick-and-roll player. He's not the type of guy who you can funnel an offense through. And with Siakam kind of being a holdover from a previous era, Scottie Barnes coming into his own as a player, it just didn't mesh to the extent that I think the brass there and the suits that they wanted. And I think that they view this as a good time to make a trade with OG, possibly trade Siakam. We'll see what they do with guys like Gary Trent Jr. Stumbling. Sorry about that.
Gary Trent Jr. is never getting traded. That man's going to be a Raptor forever. That's never happening.
I was surprised. I was a little surprised he was retained by them. I think that was this offseason, but maybe that was last summer. Anyways, they're a team to watch. I don't think that they're at a point now where they're going to ascend over the next year, but I think that they're at the point where they can kind of build their vision and get in the next era of basketball. I think that they did some fan service with the last core with Lowry. It's really difficult to break up a winning team, a beloved player. I think they squeezed everything they could out of that group. Obviously, they had the bubble run, which was really, really impressive, all things considered, the year after Kawhi. But sometimes you just have to look in the mirror, accept the state you're in, and then move on from that.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about squeezing every little last bit, Nick Nurse in those minutes over the last 2 years in Toronto, you're playing 46 minutes a night, bucko. Like, this is, we're playing 6 guys, and that's how things are going to go. It's unbelievable that did not end well for Nick Nurse in Toronto based on these last couple of years. But he's having a good time in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is really good. And Joel Embiid is playing at another level over the last month. Corbin's Corner that we do each and every week on this show. NBA thought that fascinated you this week that you're still thinking about right now?
Honestly, it's the Timberwolves. I'm seriously, not just because Jackson's here, but
no way. That's what I said too. I didn't tell you. We didn't communicate nothing.
We didn't talk at all. Like, literally, I didn't know Jackson was on until Chase messaged in, and I was like, "Oh, that's what's up, Jackson, great." But seriously, that's kind of funny, man. Look at that. But I just want to make sense of this team. I mean, they went and I thought they were gonna have a tough game against the Magic today. With the Magic being this young, scrappy team, they had no issues. And this Wolves team, like they're gonna have issues moving forward. Like next season, I'm definitely looking at how financially they keep this team together. Who's gonna be a point guard next year for them? Is it gonna be Mike Conley? Like all that stuff is stuff down the line that's still in my mind because it is this upcoming offseason. But like right now, look at where they sit. I'm trying to make sense of it. Their defense has been solid. They still have like offensive like just disaster. It feels like late in crunch time. And it's concerning. But at the same time, when they get all together and Ant looks like he does, like they look good. They look good. I'm trying to make sense of where they are because they definitely are. They the number one team in the West? No, that's Denver, right? Are they like the top 3? I would say so. But like, what does that mean? Is that a Western Conference Finals berth? Is that a tough second round exit? Like, what does that look like? They're my thought. There's a great article by John Krasinski I read on The Athletic about the Wolves' late game execution and what's going right, what's not going right, all of that. So that'd be a piece I would recommend. But like the Wolves as an entity themselves, especially coming off this win against Orlando in dominating fashion, it's a team that I am so curious about.
Jackson, are you a believer, or is there, which I see every time I watch the Timberwolves, is like there's a lot of Quinn Snyder, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert stuff here where they're going to gobble up a bunch of regular season wins, but I can't bet on this team in this group and what they're going to do late in crunch time against the big dogs come playoff time against a team who I think is going to, like we talked about, the Suns is like the worst nightmare for them of crunch time back and forth between those two. I might lean Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal in some close games at that point. But what say you, sir?
So going into the season, I was relatively high on the Timberwolves, and that's come to fruition. But they've hovered around that 15, 16, 17, 18 range offensively for much of the past 2 seasons. And last year I understood it because you were implementing the double bigs, Cat gets hurt, you make a deadline trade for Conley, and you got to shuffle parts around. But for the talent that's on this team, it's a little bit underwhelming how subpar they are offensively at times. And to me, it comes down to the turnovers. They're such a turnover-prone team. I think that for all the strides Edwards has made, one area where I don't want to say coming up short because he's ascending and reviving this franchise, but as a driver, I think the defenders are able to strip him a bit, get their hands on the ball. And at times, I think he's becoming a better kick-out passer, kind of use him as his own worst enemy. I don't want to say as a decision maker because that's such an umbrella statement, but I think that as well as, again, despite Towns being one of the best shooting bigs ever and Gobert being a really good player in the dunker spot, obviously he can score on rim rolls. There's just not quite that level of comfort there with Towns. To previously, it was pretty much spaced out for him. He could drive whenever he wanted. He could shoot a three-pointer whenever he wanted. He could post up more. So now he's kind of occupying the same areas on the court. And then lastly, this is something I've been monitoring all year, is Kyle Anderson in international ball. He suffered an eye injury, and while he was never a great shooter, he shot 41% on 2 or 3 attempts per 36 minutes last year. This season, he's pretty much stopped shooting threes, and he's shooting 12% on threes. And he does so much beyond the shot. He's such a good passer, really good chemistry with Rudy. I think he's one of the better kind of 6'8", 6'9", 6'10" defenders that typically guards threes and fours. I love him as a player. I don't want to call the trade with Memphis a heist, but he's been awesome for the Timberwolves. But I think that having Towns, Rudy, and Naz Reid, I don't want to say that he's kind of falling out of the rotation or anything like that, but sometimes I watch the Timberwolves, and the 2 players that kind of stick out to me that aren't a concrete fit are Kyle Anderson and Shake Milton.
And those are guys who I think would be valuable individually on the trade market in the next month. Both guys have value.
I think a lot of teams could use them. I was actually thinking if Philly is unable to land a premier perimeter player, they could trade for Shake Milton again. I don't know how he'd feel. I think that he wanted to leave Philadelphia just to kind of spread his wings a bit, but there's been a kind of a rotating musical chairs thing at backup point guard with the Chris Finch teams where he liked D'Lo for a bit. Playoff series versus Memphis, it kind of ran its course a bit. And then he played J-Mac at the backup spot. Now he's got Conley, who he has full faith in, and they're playing Conley every single game. Like, he's 36 years old and not load managing, not resting back-to-backs. And that's great because he's important to the team, but it's like you can't play Mike Conley every minute of every game. And so, yeah, that's 2 areas of weakness. But I believe in the Timberwolves. I really hope they get a good draw in the first round because I'm pretty confident that they'll win a round. But there's just a couple doomsday situations. It would leave such a bitter taste in my mouth and fans' mouth if they won 57 games and faced the Suns, and if they just got set on fire by KD, Booker, Beal. I mean, not to just think of hypotheticals, but as a Timberwolves fan, these are the kind of agonizing futures that I look at.
Did they win a series with Jimmy?
No, they
No,
lost to
They did
Houston.
not.
Okay.
4-1 to Houston.
So when was the last playoff series win for Minnie?
They only have 2 in franchise history,
Sacramento?
2004. Yeah, Denver and Sacramento.
Second round, Sacramento.
Oh my
2004.
goodness.
Shout out to my guy,
Yeah.
LaTrell Sprewell. He is behind me. I have a signed picture of him in the Timberwolves jersey.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm not
I was
gonna say
always more of a
Timberwolves.
Terrell Brandon guy.
Oh,
He was really
you know
good
what's
before
funny?
the injuries. He's before my time, but
Yeah.
they got a couple of his games on YouTube.
I was
That was a fun
gonna
era
say
of guards.
also before.
There you go. Terrell
was.
Brandon. Were you, I mean, were you
I
in,
have a reversible jersey of him in my closet. That's crazy.
wait, you have which one?
I have a reversible Terrell Brandon.
Which
jersey.
color?
I
Are we
just
doing the
picked
black with the green
It's the black
trees?
and blue. No, I actually
blue,
like
okay.
The blue and the black. It's the black.
Yeah.
Alternate one. It's that 2000 one because it was also before
Yeah,
my
yeah.
time. But I looked back. I mean, Jackson knows. We're hoop sickos, so I went back and watched, and I got it for like $20
Yeah.
on eBay, and I was like, "Dope!" I've
That's
only worn it
awesome.
one time, but it's still kind of cool. Yeah.
No,
Terrell
that's awesome
Brandon,
just to
Ricky
have it.
Davis, Wally Zerbiak.
Oh,
A lot of,
get out of
lot
yeah,
of dudes.
those are times. There's some fun guys out there.
Sam Cassell. Well, final thing here as we wrap up tonight on this very show. One final question for you here. League Pass team that I want to do each and every week on this show right now, because there's just a lot of teams, and I think all three of us spend a lot of time on NBA League Pass and watch a lot of different teams and like to keep up with where things are headed. And if you were talking to the casual fan watching this right now, who may or may not have watched much of the Utah Jazz, can't blame them based on how the Jazz have played this year. But Jackson, why and why not would you recommend a fan spend time with what you've seen from the Jazz this year on League Pass for a little bit? Sell the Utah Jazz for the NBA here.
Well, I'm biased with how I'm going to answer this, but I've always been a fan of Colin Sexton, and this has been a weird season for the Utah Jazz kind of guard rotation because Jordan Clarkson has largely been their best guard over the past couple years, him or Conley. Most highest usage guard, I should say. They added Sexton in the trade last year. They draft Keontae George. They have Talen Horton-Tucker, who he's an interesting player. He's so strong, and I think he's able to drive so well, but his finishing numbers don't quite match the kind of image I have for him in my mind. And they're playing all these guys, and then all of a sudden, Chris Dunn's a rotation player. He's a really good defender. I think he's kind of like I don't want to say unassertive or unaggressive, but he's kind of a move the chains, kind of run the offense, point guard, like not old school in the like set the post up, enter the ball, run your offense that way. But I think he's more of a traditional point guard in the sense of he's going to be on the court, he's going to bring the ball up from time to time, and he's going to guard like hell. But with the Utah Jazz, they are such a unique team because there's different front court combinations they use with Olynyk, Markkanen, Kessler, John Collins, and they have so many intriguing guards and so many good big men. And then Simone, I cannot pronounce his last name, so I'm not going to attempt to. As I've been watching them this season, he's had some incredible shooting display games, and he's starting games for them, playing legit minutes. And they're a team, they do a lot of like, especially if they run in transition off a missed shot, they do a lot of like flare screening stuff. They push tempo pretty good, and then they want to get it to shooters in the corner or have Kessler rim run. Lots of flare screens. Watch for that. But he's had some huge shooting games, 39% from three. And I don't know. The thing I like about the Jazz, and to a certain extent, teams like the Bulls, I like when teams are on the brink of disaster, not franchise-wise, but just their season, and then they kind of find themselves. I think that's fun to watch as a fan. If you remember Donovan Mitchell's rookie season, 2017, 2018, they were horrible to start the season. Gobert got hurt. They traded for Ricky Rubio. That was right after Gordon Hayward left and then got hurt. And they were they didn't have an identity, to be cliche. Then Donovan Mitchell takes the reins and they go on an insane run, make the playoffs a few times. And now we're here. But this team, I think everybody views them as a farm system for the rest of the league. But to me, it's like, why not keep Markkanen? I don't know if they can do the rework and extend that some teams can if they trade for him. Again, not a CBA expert, but this is a team that a lot of these guys, there's no rush to trade. If they're playing well and you're getting developmental reps for Keontae George, he's playing a ton. I'm not going to say that he's been an amazing NBA player, but as a driver, he has a certain kind of polish and poise to him. Like he's got a quick twitch game, but I think eventually we'll see him as a guy who I wouldn't say unorthodox finishes, but if he's a guy who became like a wrong foot layup type guy, floaters, finishing through contact, and I had to double check his size before the show, and he's 6'4", 185. And I think that just my view of basketball, that's a really intriguing thing if you can fill out that body. A lot of the premier scoring guards that get 18, 20, 22 points a game, they're 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", and 185, 195. And he's not an all-world athlete, but I wouldn't say that. Let me refrain from that because I haven't composed my whole opinion of him. I don't want to speak to that, but I think he's really promising, and I'm not going to say whether he's a star or a bust or anything, but he's a guy I'm keeping my eye on because I didn't expect him to play that much this season, in all honesty, because they have good guards on the roster with Clarkson, Sexton, THT, and THT was playing a ton earlier in the season.
He got a DMPCD last night.
Yeah, I've been reading Jazz Twitter a bit, and it seems that they're not too fond of him. And I know that some of the on-off stuff is bad, but like I said with THT, he's kind of a theoretical player for me. Like there's a lot of intriguing things about his game. His contract is manageable too, and just that driving style where it's all shoulders and elbows. I'm like, if that could ever click, that there would be something there. But yeah, definitely a team that I need to watch more and more, especially because they have a lot of these premier matchups with Denver, OKC, Minnesota, even Portland to an extent, who's also having a weird season with Ayton being hurt for a lot of the year, multiple bodies in and out of the lineup. And I truly think every team, for the most part, is worth watching.
For the most part, there are some that I don't even know who would be the least watchable right now. I don't know. Corban, do you have an answer there? Who's the least watchable in the league right now? Because it's not the Pistons. Pistons are fun to watch. I don't know who the least watchable team is right now. Oh, you're on mute, Corban.
Lovely. I was going to say, I do it once a show. It hasn't happened here. The Pistons have had some good games. I mean, I would put them just because Brooklyn.
Oh,
I was going to say Detroit, but they've been some phones. Brooklyn, when their offense stalls. It's so rough to watch. Like even Charlotte, I cover Charlotte, and Charlotte is 8-26, and they've had many a fun game come down to the wire. They just ended up losing. But Brooklyn, man, when they are off, they are off.
Or they're getting fined.
Or yeah, exactly. Like that is a team I would say. Other than that, I'm trying to think. Not a whole lot.
I think that personally, Brooklyn's a pretty good pick. I think right now, I'm not a big fan of watching the Hornets because
LaMelo Ball's
Williams
not there until Ball's back.
Injury.
Ball makes the Hornets a lot of fun. I've watched a lot of Hornets since LaMelo Ball's
been going off. Like this season, he's been so good.
And the thing with the Hornets is they are so reliant, and they basically run so much offense through Miles Bridges, and I don't know, maybe I'm just perceived and colored from the off court stuff, but I'm like, man, they're not even going to retain him long term. This team is totally makeshift roster wise. LaMelo Ball keeps hurting his ankles, and it just sucks all around because honestly, one of the most kind of untalked about, under-discussed stories of the season, I think, is Brandon Miller. I think he's come in and he's been a pretty good player. He's a really good, or I should say promising, mid-range shooter, promising three-point shot. The driving game for a player that size, as well as some of the passing capabilities he has, they use him on like those loop action Iverson cuts. I think that he's going to be a really unique player that's going to play well with a player like LaMelo Ball. I think that their skill sets are going to contrast well.
I like it. Well, that's all I've got tonight, fellas. Corban, what can the good folks check out from you over at Roundball Ramble, Swish Theory, and everywhere else this week, sir?
Appreciate it. We're on Ramble. We're gonna drop on tomorrow. Just the daily episode. Gotta have Jackson on. We gotta talk. We gotta get back on. Thank you, Chase, for bringing us back together. This has been fun.
Look, this show is all about bringing smart people together, and I'm glad that Jackson was able to make it, and he makes us better. He makes us think more, Corban.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, guys.
For sure. No, it really is, and I'm very grateful for this. And obviously, like you said, good people talking ball. But find me at Corban NBA on roster reconstruction for Swish Theory. I just had Charlie Cummings and Josh Earl. We did a deep dive on the Golden State Warriors, so that's out on roster reconstruction. And then I did contribute. I think it comes out this next week. But Swish Theory, we have a composite like big board kind of coming out of Think of the Lottery, and so I contributed a little bit there. I did like Rob Dillingham and Kyle Filipowski. But that's a piece that actually wrote some words, so that'll be good. But yeah, that's where you can find me at Corban NBA, Corban NBA.
There you go. What about you, Jackson? What at Medium and everywhere else can the good folks look out for you from you this week?
I would just say follow me on Twitter, Jackson Lloyd at Jackson Lloyd NBA. I do a little bit of writing, a little bit of video, just whatever I have time for. But it's kind of a drawback of following me is I'm constantly tweeting just like random thoughts about basketball, mostly basketball. So follow me there. Always love talking basketball. If you shoot me a message or mention me, I'll get back to you. And yeah.
There you go. Jackson, keep up the great work. Corban, keep up the great work. Great talking to you guys as always. And Corban, I'll talk to you next week. And Jackson, we'll have to have you on again soon.
Thanks, guys.